I think that that is the radical idea for us as queer people to gain wealth, and also to understand like the value of the money that we have as a community and as a powerful economic entity in this country. So I think that if there's a reframe that has to happen first to kind of radicalize our relationship to our personal finances.
Welcome to Living Not So Fabulously.
David,
Yes?
we've been doing this for a long time.
Girl, you saying I look old?
No, we have an amazing skincare routine.
Okay.
It's just that over the last decade or so of us doing this, we've gotten some recurring pushback from many in the community, and that is the idea that many in our community are actively resisting the idea of wealth building. Today's guest, Tiq Milan, speaks to this perfectly. Tiq is a journalist, trans activist, and media consultant sparking conversations on masculinity, race, and gender.
He's worked with HBO, Netflix, and GLAAD on LGBTQ representation and reached millions through his TED Talk and writing in BuzzFeed, CNN, and more. One of the things I find particularly compelling about this interview with Tiq is that he brings up this idea that wealth building is a form of radical activism. It does come up early in the interview, so pay particular attention.
He also shares interesting commentary on the intersection between toxic masculinity and wealth building, and why maybe many of us actually have this aversion to building wealth. So let's go to church with Tiq.
So welcome, Tiq Milan, to Living Not So Fabulously.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Definitely.
Thank you.
So we want to start this off by recently I read a very empowering, very interesting post on LinkedIn about how queer folks need to be thinking about how we ourselves are funding the fight for our rights. And
Sure.
I think that this kind of brings to this idea that there is a connection between our personal finances and our rights. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a link between our personal finances and our rights. And I think a large part of it is how we frame our personal finances as queer people, right? For me, particularly as a queer man of color, what I always say is that it's my right and it's a radical idea for me to want to build wealth, and as an advocate too. Now, if trans people are four times the national average when it comes to poverty, right? 4 times higher than national average. And I think it's something like 8 times higher if you are a queer person of color. So this radical idea around personal finances is it is okay to want to be wealthy. It is okay to want to have some luxury in your life or some comfort in your life. Because also I think when you are an advocate or activist, there's this idea that if you're an advocate or activist, then you want to be poor.
Mm.
Like you know what I'm saying? Like there's this radical idea that if you are working for the interest of the people, then what's antithetical to that is actually gaining wealth.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that is the radical idea for us as queer people to gain wealth, and also to understand like the value of the money that we have as a community and as a powerful economic entity in this country. So I think that if there's a reframe that has to happen first to kind of radicalize our relationship to our personal finances.
It's very interesting that you say that. There does seem to be a segment of the LGBTQ plus community that does have this aversion to building wealth because they do see it as sort of adopting the norms or following the man. Why do you? Where do you think that came from exactly? I mean, you shared that a little bit, that it seems like to be the opposite of trying to help people. But why do you think there's like a decoupling of that? And why can't the two be done together?
Because I think the two things can't be done together, because to amass wealth is to be a capitalist, and capitalism has been such a weapon against people with minority identities, a queer person, gay folks, queer people, women, trans people. So it's a weapon. So this is the society we live in. We live in a capitalist country and a capitalist world. So how do we use this in the fight for our rights instead of just pushing up against it and not wanting it? Because it is an energy. It's an energy and it's a resource that we can use to build up our community and to also fund our fight for our dignity and our rights, I think.
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely. Props to that. I love what you're saying right here. And I think more of us need to really think on that and adopt that and understand what that means in our lives. But you did talk about energy. And I think it's important to talk about one of the things that you really have talked a lot about when it comes to energy, and that's this idea of toxic masculinity. And it seems like that before we dive into this, maybe let's define that. What is toxic masculinity?
What is toxic masculinity? That's a really, really good question, right? I think for me, what I try to think about, okay, so let me just tell you my story. As a transgender man, it's been really important for me to define myself for myself
Hmm.
and to create a masculinity and a manhood that felt like tethered to my spirit and wasn't defined by everything outside of it. And that's the thing that I found about masculinity on this journey is that to be a masculine person is its definition is defined by everything it has a relationship to and nothing that's just itself, right? Like you're a man because you're masculine because you're not feminine. You're masculine because of who you are competing against, who you're better than, how much you have, who you can beat. But when you take all of that away, what is left of your masculinity, right? So if your masculinity is always tethered to something external, that's how that toxicity starts to happen, right? And so for me, when I try to think about what it means to not be a toxic man, right? It's not about just a man provides and a man protects, all these really like traditional ideas. You know how many women I know who provide and protect, better than a whole lot of men, So if I take that all the way, for me, I feel like being a good man in the world is being accountable to how I show up, to the space that I take up and the space that I create. Because I think that's that's a privilege that men have is that we create space. So can I create a space where everybody feels okay saying no to me, to each other? Do I create space where people feels like they can be their whole selves, their full selves around me without feeling invalidated, without feeling fear? Can I create a space of safety? So that's what I think like good masculinity does, and toxic masculinity does the exact opposite of that. Toxic masculinity is entitled. I'm entitled to your energy. I'm entitled to your body. I'm entitled to the space. Toxic masculinity only cares about itself. It isn't accountable to anybody or anything. And toxic masculinity is all about competing with other folks instead of collaborating with community. It's not about love and empathy. Like the morality around toxic masculinity isn't built around love or empathy. It's built around power and individualism.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
You're going to have a lot of speaking gigs over the next 4 years.
Yeah. I love the way that you described that at the end there. It's around power, because I think this next topic is, or next question is really buys into that or talks to that. Recently, Meta's CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he talked about how this whole idea of we need to take back the masculinity in American corporate culture. I think he said that we've been embracing too much feminine energy, and that there's been a lack of masculinity. What do you say to that? What is your response to that, especially since we know that 89% of Fortune 500 companies are run by men?
Good I can't cuss on this podcast. You know what? It speaks to just wanting to take up all the space. Like, do you want everything? 89%. 89 of people who are in decision-making positions in corporations are men. Vast majority of folks are men in decision-making positions. Vast majority of folks are white. Just a small sliver of folks aren't. You want everything, and that is toxic masculinity, not creating space. This idea that when you create space for other people, it takes away space from you. That's the thing. Toxic masculinity works in a scarcity place. It's fear-based. That's just fear. That's all it is fear. This man walks into a boardroom, and 9 out of 10 people there are men. That's not enough for him because he's scared of the power that one person, that representation, that really like this really powerful representation that is the exact opposite of him. It scares him. It scares them. All of these small-minded, pathetic men who are just running chaos right now in our government and in our businesses. It's a fear-based kind of thing, and that's the thing. When you have somebody you have a thing or an energy that is really fear-based, but it feels that it's brave, that's when it's really dangerous. There's nothing brave about what's happening. There's nothing solid about it. It's just you're scared. You're scared of trans people are the boogeyman, black people are the boogeyman, gay people are the boogeyman, so let's just cut them all out. It's pathetic, and it's petty, and it's small.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting you say this because I have oftentimes asked myself, especially since he proposed it, why is it that Elon Musk wants to buy OpenAI? And I've often wondered is because he's scared that OpenAI is run by a gay man.
Yep.
Good.
Yes. Yeah. I think so.
So I'm curious, there was just a decisive election. So I think it's an opportunity for some of us to reflect on how we got to this particular place. I agree with everything that you just said. What do we need to learn from, why do the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, the Donald Trumps of the world, why are they afraid? Where's the fear coming from exactly? And what can we do to overcome that so that it's a win-win?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I really don't have the answer to that question. I don't know what straight white men need to do to be less fearful. I have no idea, but they got to figure it out. They have to figure it out, because what happens is now this is like a cut your nose to spite your face kind of thing.
Mhm.
You're going to start making decisions, because of your fear, and it's going to blow back on all of us. So where does this fear come from? I don't know. I don't really understand how white heterosexual masculinity works in this way. There's so much power here for you to wield. There's so much power for you to change the world for better, but you choose to be scared.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't understand what that is. So all I can say for us as queer people is to lean into the places where we're not scared. Think strategically, think with empathy, think about mutual aid, show up for each other. I don't know what they need to do. I really don't know what they need to do, but I think what we need to do is lean into the ways in which we have some power, to the ways that we're not scared, and being able to walk in this life as queer people, not recklessly, but fearlessly.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now these powers that be, it's reckless, it's fearful, and it's reckless, and it's just causing so much chaos. We have to, I don't know about rising above it, or when they go high, when they go low, go high. Because I'm if they go low, I'm going to hell. You know what I'm saying? Let's take it there. You know what I'm saying? But I think maybe there's a way in which we can be more expansive and we can be deeper than what's happening here. So that's my answer. So I don't know.
If we could go back to 2008 all over again.
Well, I appreciate that you say you don't know, but you're willing to explore, right? And I think that's really important. That is, I think that maybe that speaks to this idea of power is, they want to control, and sometimes they don't understand why they want to control. And if we can understand, we can explain why it is that they don't need to control, that what we really need is community, or that what we really need is everyone being there. I want to move on to this idea of how this kind of toxic masculinity is affecting us at a personal level. When we look at the learning space when it comes to our finances, whether it's the investing space or the saving space or business space, oftentimes we see these conversations that are happening that do involve individuals displaying toxic masculinity. I think of the bro-tasticness of some of the people out there, or the boss bitches who seem to be at the same time kind of reflecting this kind of toxic behavior of how they teach people. Why do you think it's important to have other voices in that kind of space?
Yeah, I'm glad you framed it like that, because you know what it is, and this goes back to this idea we were talking about earlier with wealth being an energy source. When I think about money, I think of it, I always call it a resource. This is a resource in my life that I have to use to kind of move my life around. But what happens is what we see this kind of gratuitous, pornographic consumerism. The bro-tastics and the girl bosses with their weird little Lamborghinis and all their jewelry and all. I think it's such an ugly car. Anyway,
I say that to him all the time. Who wants to own that car? Clearly somebody does, but not me.
it's so low to the ground, and it's like a rectangle. But anyway, so what we're seeing what we're seeing is that there's a relationship between wealth and gratuitous consumerism. And then you're seeing this as a person who works at activist spaces, and you're seeing so many people who are suffering in poverty, who are just getting by. So you start to create this relationship that money is bad. Money is bad. These girl bosses, this botastic. And then we see the perpetuation of misogyny with the bros and the passport bros. And we see all of these things, and it starts to create that type of link between money and these ideas and these cultural norms, right? But I think that, a part of being a queer person is being free. That's the thing about being queer. You know what I'm saying? I identify as a queer man. I only like girls, but I identify as a queer man because I'm free. I can define everything however I want. I can reframe it. I think that's the beauty of it. I think that being queer is a blueprint to a better future. So with that being said, how about we reframe what money is for our queer lives? It's not about buying your ugly Lamborghini, you know? You know, what it really is about, it's a resource and it's an energy that you can use and that you can wield so that you can better your life and better the life of people around you. So I think that that's what it is. But again, it's like queering our whole life, queering our idea around everything, queer our ideas around money, and really make it something that is, again, that is tethered to our spirits and tethered to the spirit of community and movement.
I guess we're not going to get Lamborghini to sponsor our show.
No.
That's fine.
All right. I love Lamborghini.
Thank you, Tiq. Please hold that thought. We'll be right back after this break.
And welcome back to Living Not So Fabulously with Tiq Milan. So Tiq, I think one of the things that we're really talking about here when we talk about this toxic masculinity and the power is the ability to be vulnerable, or maybe not attacking people's vulnerability when it comes to talking about money or talking about wealth or talking about success. So how do you think that mindset affects other people when they're trying to learn how to create wealth in their lives?
Yeah. I think what happens oftentimes, people don't want to be vulnerable around their own struggles with money. You know, and if you can't really be vulnerable, I mean, being vulnerable, you don't have to tell everybody all of your financial business, of course, but being able to be vulnerable around trusted people so that you can start to learn about how to use your money as a resource. You know, you see people who have money but you don't see the struggle behind it. And that's the thing. People think it's so easy. I could just do that. You know, all these people are, you know, they're making this money and people are content creators and they're making thousands of dollars a month, and I can do it, and no one is ever seeing the struggle. And I'll tell you right now, I was broke way longer than I had money. Like years and years of struggle. It is a lot, you know, but being able to be vulnerable about that and say, these are the struggles I'm having. And then you know what happens when you start to be vulnerable? You start to see that other people are going through the same things. Right. And there's a through line as to why everybody is kind of just 2 seconds from the struggle bus. You're just like 2 bad decisions away from being on that financial struggle bus. And what is that? So it is important to have those vulnerable conversations with trusted people so you can start to figure out, okay, this is what's happening systematically. This is what's happening like culturally. These are the things, these systems in these culture and these cultural things that are happening are affecting my personal decision making around my money. How can I be better about that? So I think that being vulnerable is so important. It's such an important key to elevating our lives in a myriad of ways.
Yeah, I want to take that just a little bit further. You're a leader in the queer space, and it does seem that we're becoming a little bit more open to being vulnerable about certain topics, right? We talk a little bit more about mental health these days than we did even just 5 or 10 years ago, and talking about more of struggles of trying to, you know, maybe to our health issues and other challenges that we might have. What do you think can be done within the queer community to make talking about our personal finances more normal and less of a taboo topic?
Yeah, I think the idea to make it not such a taboo topic is to decouple money from like the weaponry of capitalism. You know, this idea of having wealth, and I'm asking a whole lot. No one's, you know, if you have $1 billion, you know, you've had to step on a whole lot of heads to get to $1 billion. All right, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about just how do we, you know, have enough wealth within our communities to take care of ourselves. And I think it's this reframing. Money is not necessarily your enemy. Capitalism is what it is. You know, we're not going to see that change in my generation or the generation after this. So how do we use this to our benefit? So I think there's a fear there too, because, you know, people particularly queer folks have a lot of financial trauma. A lot of financial trauma. You come out at home to your parents, you come out as gay, they say, I'm cutting you off. Now you got to go out here and survive. There's so many, you know, I've worked with LGBTQ for many, many years. So many of my young kids who were put out had the financial trauma, had to survival sex work. You know, so there's a lot of trauma there too. So I think that there's a level of compassion. It's really deep. When we talk about how can we change our relationship to money, it is such a traumatic relationship so many of us have to money. So it's like working through that trauma and starting to understand that this is a power that you do have control over and that you can use for your betterment.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just shared that you struggled more with finances than you felt financially secure. How has that transition to a level of financial security made you a better activist for yourself individually, as well as the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah. Not being broke anymore is helpful because when you have some resources, when you have money as a resource, it gives you like the most important resource, which is time,
Mhm.
right? That's the real wealth. When I have enough money to live my life and do the things that I want to do, I don't have a lot of stress going into like how am I going to eat, how I'm going to pay my rent. You know what I'm saying? So I get to relinquish that stress, and I also have time. And with time also comes options, and that's what the real wealth is. Money is a resource that you can have more time, you can have more options. And so it gives me more time to be more creative in my thought, to be more introspective. It gives me more time to be able to collaborate with people to do bigger things to kind of move the needle. So that's the thing when it comes to having money. Because 'cause let me tell you, the hardest working people I know are people who don't have any money.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Folks who are living check to check, who are like, I'm perpetually broke, are working their behinds off constantly. And the people I know who have a lot of money, they're not really working all like that. They're not working 50 hours, 60 hours a week. They're not because wealth affords you time. And time is that one finite resource we can't get back. And that's the thing. That's what you want. Give me my time. Listen, my father needs to tell me every day you're just another day closer to dying, which is awful and morbid, but it's the
It's
truth.
true.
It's
Right.
true. Time is the one finite resource we have. So I want control over my time while I got it. And money gives you that. And with that time, we have options. So I think for me, that's what made it better for me. I have options to do different things, and I have more time to collaborate with like-minded people and do bigger things.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, you talked about this idea of time and what it affords us, and kind of juxtapose that against people who are working paycheck to paycheck. What impact do you think the lust for consumerism, especially for queer folks? I think that there's a lot of like desire to show how fabulous we are. I mean, that's the title of the show, Living Not So Fabulously, right? We love to live fabulously. Um, do you think that there's a conflict here, that we are trying to live so fabulously that we are actually starving ourselves of time that allows us to have that power?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think yes. I think yes, and I wanna have a fab time,
Yeah.
I like to go what I'm saying? I want a nice pretty drink that might cost me $18, okay, but I want it. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? I wanna look a certain way, I wanna travel a certain way, so I get it, but it's like doing it for the sake of, and again, it's like shifting this relationship. So, yeah, we wanna have a fabulous life as queer people, we could be really flamboyant, but where does that come from? That flamboyance is a part of our protest.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah,
Yes.
I'm gay and I'm queer and I'm here and check me out. And I'm having everything that you told me I couldn't.
Hmm.
Right? That's the consumer part of it. But the thing is, and again, that's your external relationship, right? So the external relationships that I'm having everything you said that I couldn't. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
have this fabulous life. I'm gonna live this, I'm gonna live on your street in this beautiful house, right? But the internal relationship is the time.
Hmm.
So it's like, it's that reframing and giving just as much energy to that internal relationship that wealth gives you with your time and see how you want to spend that time. So it's a both and, but it's like you can't let one supersede the other. And we see that a lot, but that's the nature of capitalism, right? I think like that's the Jedi mind trick of capitalism and having money that tells you just get this money so you can buy a bunch of stuff.
Mhm.
They're not going to tell you get this money so that you can think about the time that you have so that you can make this world better, so you can make it different, so you can make it more so you can bring more equity into this world.
Right.
That's what
Yeah.
they're not telling.
I love all that. So this is a personal finance show, and we want to wrap up with that. From your
Mhm.
own experience, if you were to share one personal finance tip to somebody in the LGBTQ plus community who's listening or watching, what would that tip be?
Invest your money. Invest your money, take it out of the savings accounts are for me, a savings account is just a holding place. I just put some money in a savings account because I'm just saving it because I'm gonna do a big purchase. But money that I'm actually saving for my life, put it in like an IRA, buy some stock. There's some, stocks that you can buy that are just gonna do well. Yeah, and I know it's controversial, so I'm not even gonna get into certain companies, but whatever. But it's for me that's been great. Just to put my money into some stocks and put my money into an account, and it grows exponentially, way faster than it's going to grow in a savings account because of the inflation rate. You lose money. Actually, you end
Mhm.
up losing money. So that's the thing. Invest, even if it's just $100. Take a little $100 and put it into some of these stocks that are always going to do well. and watch your money grow
Awesome.
over time, and be patient with your money and your.
That's the hard part.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the hard part. Be
I'm just
patient.
going to ask you one last question. To the person who says, why bother? It's all going to be taken away from us anyway. What would you say?
Take control over your time. They're going to take it all from you, but your money is going to give you time. So amass the wealth that you can. It's a resource for you. It's an energy resource for you to take control of the one finite resource that we all have, which is a finite source of time. It's going to give you more time. It's going to give you more options. So go get the bag.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tiq.
Thank
We
you,
appreciate
Tiq.
that.
Yeah, absolutely
you.
love this. Love the conversation.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us on Living
you.
Not So Fabulously.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Wow, conflict of interest aside, I think every LGBTQ plus person needs to listen to or watch this episode. And I particularly loved how Tiq shared that your wealth is your power, and that power buys you your most precious resource, and that is your time. And when you think about it, some of the hardest working people are those that have the least amount of time and the least amount of money. And on the flip side, some of those who work the least seem to have the most money and the most available time to them. So clearly, your wealth can buy you time.
Right, that's why we say true wealth, which is subsidized by your investment income, buys you freedom. It actually buys you 5 freedoms: financial freedom, location freedom, relationship freedom, time freedom, and you freedom. The ability to be yourself without fear of reprisal.
So thank you for joining us for another episode of Living Not So Fabulously. Catch new episodes of the show every Wednesday at noon Eastern Time at yahoofinance.com, YouTube, and wherever you binge listen to your favorite podcasts.
Yeah, and remember to like, subscribe, set notifications, because even Beyonce needs backup dancers. And until next time, stay fabulous.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.